All right, well, it's getting pretty quiet, so we might as well get started, right? Okay, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the September Lancaster Real Estate Investment Meeting. Always good to see everyone. Some of you guys probably just came out for the ASE tonight, right? It's a hot one out there today. But yeah, always excited for these meetings. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Jake Byler. I've been a part of these meetings for quite a while. Probably 10 years since we started here. Joe Liofsky started the group back in the early days, and a lot of changes since then. But it's been a good group. It's been a fun group to be a part of, and I've gotten a ton of value myself over the years from learning from speakers at these events and networking with people as well. So thanks for coming out, because you guys are part of that. You guys make that possible. There's a lot of experience, a lot of successful investors in the room, and probably a lot of beginning investors that are just getting started or just wanting to get started, and it's a good place for you as well. It's a good place for contractors, you name it. We generally focus on real estate investing or some form of that, but really it branches out into business and life in general, really. So anyway, a couple things before we get to our main speaker for the evening. Most of you are probably aware that these meetings are paid for primarily by sponsors. Once in a while we'll take up donations, but primarily by sponsors. And our sponsors for this year are Dave Wolf with Principal Mortgage Group, Ben Yoash, he's a local realtor. You're going to hear from him shortly with a quick market update. Nathan Rittenhouse, Lanka Federal Credit Union. You're going to hear from him in a little bit as well. And Jeff Moeller does some private lending. And Joe Liofsky, Compass Property Management. Those are the guys that are paying for our meetings for this year. So, Nate, you can come on up. Nathan Rittenhouse, Lanka Federal Credit Union. He's a young banker that has been actually doing it for quite a while. And I did a couple of refinance deals with Nate very recently. Amazing experience. So he's going to tell us a little bit about what he does.
Thanks, Jake. I'm Nathan Rittenhouse, work for Lanka Federal Credit Union. We're a local credit union and based in Lancaster County. We've always been in Lancaster County. Started out actually in the closet of a classroom. A teacher decided to start a credit union with other teachers, and then it took off, and now we're here in Lancaster County. So I thought tonight we'd talk about three things that every lender's looking for. I do mostly real estate loans, but this can apply to any loan for a small business if you're self-employed. But that's credit, character, and cash flow. You need to keep a good credit score. If you can keep that above 700, that'd be great. Most lenders will love to see that. One thing I tell people to look out on their credit is for collection items that they might not know of. I see it all the time where a landlord will have a tenant that thinks the water bill is in the landlord's name, and the landlord thinks the water bill is in the tenant's name, and they are taking 10-minute showers every night, and that bill is going to the landlord's credit on their collections because nobody's paying the bill. So it's a good thing to check on your credit every once in a while. You actually are entitled to 3 free credit reports each year, one from each of the main credit bureaus, TransUnion, Equifax, and Experian. So you are welcome to check those out and request them from each of those companies once per year. Character is the other point. You want to have good character and show that your lender that you're a good, hardworking business owner. You show your lender that you can work hard and that you're honest. He'll be usually more than happy to lend you money. And the last one is cash flow. Make sure you report income to your tax returns, and your lender will be happy with that as well. So feel free to talk to me afterwards if you have any questions. Happy to talk about loans or your portfolio or any deals that you want to look at right now. Thanks.
And I would imagine if there's any young investors in the room that have really never bought anything, never done a loan, and if you want to sit down with Nate, like really go over what he's looking for and stuff, it can be very helpful to understand how it just all works with cash flow. I mean, what a banker really cares about is how they're going to get paid back, right? They want to be paid. They don't really want to be paid all at one time in the first year. They want to be paid over a period of time, and they want to know that we have the ability to do that. So I'm sure Nate would be happy to hop on a call or sit down with you if you want to get a better grip of exactly what they're looking for. Benyo Ash, you can come on up. Benyo's going to give us a little bit of a market update. I don't know what he has for us tonight, but with this market and with these interest rates, there's always plenty to talk about. Nobody really knows what's happening, but we all like to guess. So we'll see what Benyo has for us.
That is true. We're all guessing out here. But yeah, there's some stuff that's still worth watching. I mean, there's something we can draw from all of this. Not this. This is like the main data set I draw from. We're not going to go through that because we're here to listen to Matt, not me. So, but one of the things that is interesting to look at is, so we're almost a year and a half into a rising rate environment, and seeing, so today felt like a good time to me to dig into some of that, like what's been happening in that year and a half, what are the numbers really like in that time. One of the illustrations of what that's done to affordability is right here. So this is sort of your classic, with home prices being in the $300,000, $350,000 range in Lancaster County on average. So your 3% rate, which would have been just a year and a half ago, this was pretty close to your average rate. That's your monthly payment, $1,327. Today, 7% is actually a pretty good rate now, and your payment is up about 35%. But prices have pretty much stayed level, and what gives there? So if the cost of borrowing goes up 35%, shouldn't prices go down 35%? Maybe, but that's not what's happened. Here's what has really happened there. So this is, again, the past little under 18 months, which is about how long rates have been doing their thing. The top bar is, well, actually the bottom bar is probably the more interesting thing. This is pricing. The green line on the bottom is, that's median home price in Lancaster County. I know some of you are from Chester County. I was curious about that too and looked at it, and that has been roughly the same. The numbers are a little higher, but the numbers have more or less tracked the same thing. So April is when we saw the first rate hikes, and prices actually kept moving up for a little while there. Then we saw this big dip in the beginning of the year. To me, that looks a bit like people were starting to feel it. It was that combined with a really constrained inventory in the beginning of the year as well. So that led to overall the market volume dipped pretty good. Just less sales were happening in February, and prices dipped pretty good as well. And then since then, we've been heading back up to, new highs really. And the top that's the total volume, residential volume in Lancaster County. So that has sort of tracked the same thing. For a while it kept moving up. We had the dip early in the year, and then since then we've been tracking back up to about what a normal level would be. So why is all that happening? Again, we're about, so it costs about 35% more to own the same home now, and that's not even taking into consideration that prices have risen. Why have prices not fallen? One of the things that makes sense to me there is, well, so say you're sitting on a 3% interest rate, which most people are, 3 to 4 in today's world if they bought a home a year or two ago. Why would they want to move into a 7% rate? So that causes a constraint on the inventory side, which means there's less to buy. There's still a whole bunch of buyers out there that want to make it happen. They just, there's just a limited amount of it to buy, and so that keeps prices stable. So we'll see how long that lasts, but really, it's almost cliche to say at this point, but what it's going to take to drive prices down, if that ever happens again, is a glut of inventory. So what's going to drive that, I'm not sure. So one thing that this data doesn't show that's been my personal experience the last few months has been that unrealistic sellers aren't getting away with it as much anymore. We're seeing more deals that are now sitting for a little while, and they're willing to take some kind of reduction to get it done. Whereas a year and a half ago, by and large, we're getting away with it, or we were getting away with it, however you want to word that. So now, I think there's more of an opportunity in the market. If you're staying sharp, staying in the game, continuing to look at deals, making offers, there's more opportunity in the market now than there has been for probably, I would say, 3 or 4 years. And again, this is personal experience. I'm not going to show you data to back that. But to me, that's a really good example of, It's one of the good reasons to stay in the game, even when when it feels like things are tough. There's just not a ton of deals out there. It's tempting sometimes to just pull back and say, I'll take care of what I've got for the next few years. I'm not saying that's a bad idea, depending on your position, but I really think this is a good time to be in the game and hunting deals, getting out there, making offers. And the other thing that does is whenever things get easier again, and they will at some point, you'll have spent some time in the trenches learning these things and sharpening your skills, and then everything gets easier at that point. So hopefully that's helpful to someone. But yeah, that's some of the data. It's pretty fascinating stuff to me. I hope you find it interesting as well. And I'm ready to hand it over to you, Matt.
Thank you, Daniel.
Or Jake.
For now, we're almost at Matt. Yep, that's good stuff. It's pretty wild. I was talking to Nate just before the meeting. It's like rates are still ticking up a little bit, still expecting another Fed rate increase, and that stuff doesn't really show its full effects for a little while. So I don't know what it'll look like, but we're here to learn and find the opportunity because they're always there. Okay. How many of you guys have not heard Matt Byler speak before? Wow, that was quite a bit. So Matt is pretty well known in the community for a number of reasons, but one of the reasons is because of a weekly call that he does. Do you call it a podcast, Matt? I don't know if it's a podcast, but there's a call-in number, and you can listen to about a 30-minute call every week that Matt does early Monday mornings when most of us are still sleeping. I listen to it almost every Monday on my run, and I just find it quite interesting. He has an eye for just coming up with different ideas, stories, and news, and just a lot of stuff. So I think it's been 2 to 3 years since Matt spoke at our meeting. He moderated the panel when Gid Zook, Coleman Center, Junior Ash, and Glenn Eshelman spoke. How many of you guys were at that meeting? Maybe almost half, or maybe a third of you. That was at the Intercourse Fire Hall. That was a fun one. There were still people that talk about that one. That's probably been 4 years or more. But anyway, so Matt is a business owner, has a trucking company, does a lot of investing, and just has a really practical approach. So he's going to be talking to us about a bunch of that stuff. I think he's going to pull a couple other people up for some real life stories and examples of stuff. So I was going to mention, you might be wondering how you can get a hold of the call thing that Matt does. I will put that in the email when I send out an email tomorrow. I'll also put it in the email that went out today. And if you're not on our email list, and if you'd like to be added, there's a paper on the table in the back with instructions of how you can get on our email list. So with that, would you help me welcome Matt Byler? You wired up?
Yes. Can you hear me? Is it working? Okay, good. Well, excited to be here with you guys. Now, my name's Matt Byler. It's a lot like Jake Byler, but we're not brothers. We're not even related. And if you look at how our names are spelled, you understand why. I never knew why people would take 6 letters to spell their name when 5 will do. But ask Jake, maybe he has an explanation. And by the way, he's B-E-I-L-E-R. I'm B-Y. My great-great-great-great-grandfather misspelled his name. I don't generally admit that, but that's actually what happened. So anyway, great to be here with you. Hey, last week, 2 of my boys, something going on in the pantry. They were arguing and a lot of noise and like, give me that. No, it's mine. And my wife's like, guys, what's going on? And Andrew's like, and William wants my cookie. And William said, it is my cookie. Andrew's trying to eat it. And she's like, well, just eat another one. Well, it's the last one that was left. And see, Jonathan had told William that he can have it the evening before, but he waited till the next day to eat it. And here he comes in, and Andrew's eating it. I know this was a problem. My wife said, it was a teaching point, right? What would Jesus do? And William said, he'd break it and make 5,000 more. So anyhow, that's what we want to do tonight. We have our experiences that we learned, and by sharing, we get more. And so that's our goal for tonight, that there's plenty to reach around, and hopefully we can all learn together. Now, one of the most iconic investors of our time, when you think of a really good investor, who do you think of? Buffett, that's right. So he has a lot of money. Does anyone have any idea what his secret to success is? What did you say?
Long-term buy and hold.
Yeah.
Time and consistency.
Good.
He didn't quit working at 65.
That's right. Yeah, you guys are nailing it. So one of the main things, if you look at a chart of his life, his net worth of his life, if he would have quit, if he would have started on his 30th birthday and quit at age 65, he would be worth less than 1% of his current net worth. You'd have never heard of him. But I think he's 92, and he's still at it. So the one thing that he simply could not have done without is time. Now, he's still doing it at age 92, which, do you think that he gets up every morning and his wife says, "What are you up to?" "Oh, gotta go to work." Think that's what he does, age 92? Absolutely not. He's loving it. He goes to the office because he really likes it. And he drinks his coffee, I'm sure, and he just can't wait to get in there. He's looking forward to it. So you need to enjoy your work. And it's important to do what you do for a long time. Do a good job of it and then do it for a long time. By the way, a lot of people's single best investment is their house. Now, I know that Kiyosaki says that a house is not an asset because it costs you, it doesn't bring you cash flow. But still, of all the things that people buy, a lot of times it's their house. And the reason is it's because it's about the only thing that they own for more than 25 years. So if you'd like to get in on that, talk to Benio. I'm sure he can hook you up. But Coca-Cola, CEO, how much do you think he got paid last year? Any idea? Cheater. Well, you're pretty close, actually. 21 million, 21,800,000. So that's a lot of money, right? I mean, to me, it's a lot of money. To you guys, maybe not. So Buffett also got some money from Coca-Cola. What do you think he got? Well, you're pretty good, man, you guys. I don't know if you're guessing or not, but you're pretty good. So he got $704 million last year from Coca-Cola. Now, the CEO, I don't know exactly what his work schedule is. For most people, you put in 40 hours. He's a CEO. Maybe he can shorten it down to 35. But he still has to show up to work. He's got a lot of responsibilities. He needs to be there. Does anyone have any idea how many hours Buffett put in at Coca-Cola? 0. Man, you guys are good. I'm feeling insecure. You're really smart. So yeah, he put in 0 time, and he earned a lot more than the CEO did. Isn't that remarkable? And one of Buffett's rules is, until you learn to earn in your sleep, you will work until you die. Now, Buffett's fine with that. He's still working, right? But he's loving it. The critical thing is you want to choose to go to work. You don't want to have to go to work. So 3 of Warren's secrets are that you should enjoy what you do. He doesn't talk about that, but he lives it. He demonstrates it. Another thing, do it for a very long time. I don't know I ever heard him say that either, but that also is really obvious. When you look at a chart of his net worth, I really wish I could put it up there. You guys love it. It's just little marks, and then the last bit, it spikes. But he would have never got that if he wouldn't have stayed with it. And until you learn to earn in your sleep, you will work until you die. So to understand and calculate risk in deals, it's a really important thing. Do you know what Buffett's 3 primary rules are that he goes by in investing? It's
Don't lose money, don't lose money, don't lose money.
You repeated yourself. Did you mean to do that? Okay. Yeah, you're right. So the number 1 rule never lose money. And the number 2 rule, never lose money. And the third one's a lot like it. That's never lose money also. So, I mean, you guys are saying, yeah, sure, of course. But what is it really? But for real, it really is. When you lose money, you go back to 0 and you have to start over. And it really kills momentum. Now, 2 main parts of never losing money are calculating risk and understanding collateral. And I was surprised, Nathan, that you didn't say collateral. You were going through the C's. I thought it was going to be credit, character, cash flow, collateral. Is collateral not a big deal for you guys? All right. Interesting. So if you understand what your collateral is in a deal, it really helps. Now, in calculating, something that we need to keep in mind, did you ever hear of a term called illusory superiority? You ever hear of that? Okay, I didn't either. I just made it up. Actually, there is a thing like that. But what that is, 70% of drivers think they're above average. It's kind of remarkable, right? 70% of drivers think they're above average. Can't be. So we would like to learn from Buffett because he has had a lot of success. And one of the important things in life is to model people who have experienced success, because it can't be really that hard, right? You just repeat what the smart guy does and you'll end up with pretty good results. Anyone know who Buffett's mentor was? Good job. Man, you guys are crushing it. Yeah, Benjamin Graham. And what he said is that an investor's chief problem and his greatest enemy is likely to be himself. So we just need to be aware of that. I think I'm kind of smart, right? Most of you do, and it's 70% of us think we're above average. But the way this works is that the average home renovation in the United States starts with a budget of $18,658. I guess there's a national average for that. So 18.5. But the average cost ends up being $38,700. That's the national average. That means there are some people who I mean, this average, we had really, really dry this spring. Didn't rain the entire month of May in our area. And then the month of July was a record breaker wet, but we had this average rainfall. So if the average cost, the average cost going into it's 18.7, and the average or the average estimate is 18.7 going in, average cost coming out is 38. That means there's some people who really take a whooping. But it's just good to be aware of that. There was a study looking at railroad projects worldwide. And it was a long period of time. It was between 1969 and 1998. And they found that the average error in calculating their customers was 106%. The railroads, over about 30 years worldwide, miscalculated their customers by 106%. They overestimated, not underestimated. I mean, you'd think somebody would have looked at the average, but I'm just telling you, it's really easy to make mistakes. And you know, I understand my own mistakes. Sometimes something happens around the shop, and I'm like, you know, I'm glad I did that. If somebody else would have done it, I'd have a hard time understanding it. But it's real. So people always assume that their situation's different. And now, on that same note, there's 4 levels of competence. And you know, I've experienced all 4, and you've probably seen people that are in the different 4. So you start out with unconscious incompetence. I get into this thing and I say, what can be so hard? You know, Kevin programs fans, and I say, what can be so hard about that? I mean, it looks nice to me. You just sit in your office and you program a little and you send them out the door, you make money. That's better than real work. So I want to do that too. And I get into it, And there's all kinds of problems. Like, oh my word. I was unconsciously incompetent. I was so bad, I didn't even know it. That's really dangerous, all right? But it happens anytime you're new in a field. And then I realized this is actually hard work. And so I really buckle down. I start studying. I read books. Now I'm conscious. I'm still incompetent, but I'm conscious of it. So the next level is conscious incompetence. That bothers me. So I get books, and I read, and I study, and I work really hard, and I get to the next level. It's conscious competence. Now I can do a decent job, but I really have to focus. And I can't talk to anyone. I really have to stay dialed in. And then the last level is unconscious competence. And that's when I'll hold phone conversations with Kevin, all right? And he's coding. And I'm thinking, I don't know if I'd want to buy that fan because he's chatting with me. But it works out. Because he's so good, he's done it for such a long time that he's better unconsciously than most people are when they focus. And that's what happens anytime that you master a deal. So just be aware when you get into a new field, you'll probably go through those 4 phases. Unconscious incompetence, conscious incompetence, or conscious competence, and then unconscious competence. And once you get to the last, that's where you can really, once it looks easy when you do something, that's when you start realizing profit. That's when you go into a deal and you see things, you don't even notice that you're seeing it, and somebody's like, why'd you pass on that? And you're like, well, I mean, did you notice whatever? And you just notice it so quickly. It just happened the other week. A friend bought a trailer, a tiny house, and you know, because I'm moving buildings all the time, I notice things. I walked up and I was like, oh, I better take a picture of that so he knows I didn't damage that roof. And it was just right. It seems simple, but it's because I've done it for so long. So an investor's chief problem, his greatest enemy, is likely to be himself. You need to be aware of that. We constantly overestimate how good we are, and we get excited about things. Our greatest enemy. So just be aware of that. It's tricky. If you're going into a deal, there's usually a sales pitch, right? And it's tricky because my words and someone else's words, they might be the same words, but there's something different behind it. With shed deliveries, sometimes I talk to people and they're so worried. I mean, can you come out and look at the site? And well, yeah, I can, but it'll cost you. I'll look at pictures for free, and I'm serious, it's time, right? You can't just drive, anyhow. But then other people are like, oh yeah, you'll be good, come on out. And I've found that the worriers generally have better access than the non-worriers. So the same words coming from a different person can have a very different meaning. So when you're getting a sales pitch, you should know a little bit what that person's past performance was. Like, what do his words mean? Is he just excited about it, or does he have sales quota to meet? Because you know, when you buy a deal, you're investing. But to the person who's selling it, it's an item, like selling shovels. You know, selling whatever it is that you want to buy. So understand more than the words. And if you understand what the person has to gain from the transaction, that also helps. Like how's the deal structured? It's really important that you understand that, because it can make a difference on, you know, are your interests aligned? Some people get paid going into the deal. Other people only get paid when you make money. It's important to, get a feel for that. So when we're talking about business partners, then one of the things that's really important is integrity. Can anyone tell me what honesty means? That's right.
Aligning who you are with, aligning your actions with your words.
That's right, yeah. That's the evidence then afterwards, if you can see that the actions lined up with the words going into the deal. What's the opposite of honesty? Deceit? That's right. Dishonesty, a crook. So there's different levels. There's different levels of that. And so if you have honesty over here, and we want red. We don't want crooks. You have crooks over here. There's a whole spectrum in between. So if someone's dishonest, we think of a lie maybe. But I was thinking about, and probably when you get to the far spectrum of dishonesty is when there's violence included yet. The salesman doesn't just want your money. He catches you out in a dark alley and has a club or a knife and says, all right, buddy, give me your money. And so he takes your money, right? That's dishonest. That's being a thief. And then maybe it's someone who's just wants your money, but he's a gentleman. He would never do that. And he thinks if you're enough of a sucker to sign, well, that'll teach you. Maybe you'll learn about it. You'll learn if you get smacked around a couple times. And then there's people who don't just do entirely what they say. It's just a little shady, and it sneaks up on you, right? I really try to be honest. I want to be honest, but just last week, last year, there was a fellow who's working. We did a deal, and he wanted paid, but anyhow, he didn't want all money, so he wanted a vehicle, and we ended up buying a pickup, and so he paid 2/3, I paid 1/3, and that way I got to use it too, and it was kind of a neat deal. But he needs money this year, so he wanted cash, and the easiest way is to take it to a car dealer and sell it, right? So he called different dealers, and he got a price of $38,600. And I have a friend who's a dealer, and so I sent him a text and said, hey, pick up. What do you give me for it? And he said he'd give me $39,500. I was like, okay, that's $1,000. And then I was talking to my wife, and I was like, so Mike's expecting 2/3 of this number. But it's my connection. It's I don't have to give him that. He set the price. And my wife, being a good wife that she is, she didn't say, oh, you're so smart. She didn't do that. She said, just stop it, would you? Just. I was like, you're right. Why would I? It's $1,000. There was nothing really wrong, right? Would you agree with me? It was my connection. He set the price. I'm allowed to negotiate. It's all fine. But it was a different level. If I sell it to my buddy and he sees it down there instead of at the dealer, it's just really nice when you're honest, right? There's no funny stuff. You don't have to be embarrassed about anyone. I met a guy last spring, and he was a roofer, and chatting and interesting. I was wondering how, when you do upsells in your when you're roofing, do you do upsells? And he's like, no, not really. It's like, really? Because that's just really common, right? You want to get as much as you can out of the customer. And he said, no. He said, if somebody wants something extra, he'll do it. But if it's not necessary, he'll tell them that even though that other roofer told you that you should do this, it's not necessary. Here's why it's not necessary. If it makes you feel better, I'm happy to do it. This is what it'll cost. But that fella had a really clear, he had clear eyes. He had a smile that lit the night. He had a firm handshake. He was just legit, right? That's the sort of person that you want to work with. Someone that you ask him, he says what's good for you, not just good for him. It's all right to make money. It's even very good to make money. But it's good to have integrity, to be way over here where you're honest. And if people find out details of a deal, there's nothing to be embarrassed about. Now, if we would all like to work with people like that, it would probably also be good if we were people like that. And I'm telling you that illusory superiority, it sneaks up on you because, anyhow, that was just last week, and yeah, I was glad for my wife. So when you're when you come up to a deal, and you know, if we want to sell something that isn't actually good for the customer, if we're trying to snooker them a little bit, if we want to come back towards this side, be a little deceitful, just a little shady, it's because we want something, right? We want something pretty bad. For me, to have a clear conscience, 30% of a grand, I mean, that's, yeah, I mean, so it would have been, it would end up being yeah, $1,000, a little bit more. Do you think that's having a not clear conscience? Does a grand cover it? Then you just feel uneasy, but you're still going to... There's actually a verse about that where David prayed that he would never be so rich that he forgets God, never so poor that he has to steal. But you're right. You know, when it comes down to brass tacks, if it's feeding the kids, then that would be tough. But most of us look pretty well nourished, so I'm guessing we're not quite there. But would you give up a clear conscience for $1,000? No. Glad to see that. How about $5,000? 10?
Are we supposed to say yes when we would, or how do you want to say
Yeah, once I get to the number, you say, yeah, for 20 grand, I'd probably rip off my mom. So wherever that number is, whatever number that you want to put out there, I was thinking about it, and I said, you know, my clear conscience is probably worth more than that. I didn't actually get to a number. Yeah.
I have a pretty off-color joke, but it could explain what you're saying real easy. There's a guy on his yacht, sees a very attractive woman, and he says to her that he would like to offer her money to spend some time with her. She goes, no, that's not the kind of person I am. He says, well, I'll give you $10 million. She goes, wow, $10 million. Okay. So then I get a little closer to, you know, consuming the deal, and he says, well, here's the $500. And she goes, $500? You said $10 million. What do you think I am? No, I'm not. I'm not that type of person. He goes, oh, yes, you are. We're just negotiating terms now. So, you know, whether you feel that way for $500 or $5 million, it's not the dollar amount that makes the difference.
You're right. Yeah, that's a good illustration. No, there's absolutely, there's no number that's worth it, right? Having a smile that lights the night, a clear, clear eyes, a good handshake, just not needing to be ashamed of anyone, that's worth millions. There's no number that can equal that. I have a friend who's a chicken farmer, and he sells chicken manure. And when he's loading the spreader, sometimes he's tempted to maybe just not make this scoop quite as full. And he's, you know what? Every time he gets that idea, he puts an extra scoop on. And the reason he does that is because he says Satan is tempting him, and I'm going to show him a thing or two. You tempt me, he's going to get, I'll just give a better measure. So I like that. That's affirmative action. That's taking charge, and it cuts the temptation. So how much is it worth to be honest? Probably more than that, right? No matter what the number is, more than that. So go get the money. Just don't let the money get you. it's really cool when you see people who prosper. You generally get money by helping others. The more people you help, the more you get. And if you think long term, the more that you can treat people right, the more eager they will be to do business with you. And so just, go get the money. Just don't let it get you. So beware of fast cash. There's nothing wrong with making a good profit. But have you ever noticed how often the get-rich-quick deals are actually get-rich or get-poor-quick deals? It works out that way. How much of Buffett's money did he earn from dot-com stocks? Do you know how much he invested in the tech boom? Well, then you know how much money was made in the dot-com era? Well, I don't either, but it was a lot. But yeah, you're right. He did not invest in the dot-com stocks at all because he didn't understand technology. There was all this money, and he stayed clear of it. It's obvious that he likes to make money, right? He really enjoys it. Otherwise, he wouldn't have a lot. But he didn't get sucked into it. He understood the 4 levels of competence, I think. And he knew that if he goes into tech stocks, it's unconscious incompetence. And he could do very well with Coca-Cola and other companies like that are slow, they're boring, but they're delivering a real value to real people every day. And so if you buy that, what are the odds of Coca-Cola going to zero in the next year? It's not too high, right? But there were a lot of dot-com stocks that went to zero. And he says never lose money. He lives that too. And it's a secret. It's a secret that works. It's tricky, but it's tricky because it's so tempting. How about crypto? How much money did Buffett invest in crypto? Is that why his net worth spiked in the last couple years? Dogecoin. No, he hasn't touched any of that either. Why not? It's because he doesn't understand it, and he's pretty good at other things, right? The slow, boring money is actually very good money. But in saying that, I don't want you to think that something has to pay very little in order to be solid, right? It's understanding risk and calculating your collateral. If you can if you can judge the value, you can make a lot of money without taking on a lot of risk. But that's very different. That takes competence, and you don't get the. If you bought Dogecoin and you made money, great. I mean, I'm really happy for you. But for everyone that made money with Dogecoin, there's a lot more people who lost money. So it's a greater fool theory, right? When you sell, somebody else buys, and you need somebody to buy because once no one buys, then there's no actual value there. Dogecoin was started as a joke. It really went high, and there was a lot of people that made a lot of money. There's a lot of people that lost a lot more. But understanding value is one of the main things that Buffett is very, very good at. That's what Benjamin Graham, that was his core thesis of understanding value. What's the name of Graham's book?
Intelligent Investor.
That is, yeah, that's it. Did you read it?
I got it, but I thought it was too boring.
How many people read it? Good for you.
Incredibly boring.
Oh, I know. I read it aloud just to kill flies. And I actually read it, but oh my word, it was I did not comprehend that much, right? It was like slogging along another page, and I'm thinking about whatever, fun stuff. And I didn't get any of that. Yeah, well, I got another page. Anyhow, I read it, but it was tough. But there actually was a lot of good things in there. I remember the drudgery more than I remember the good points, though. But Buffett not only read it, he lived it. It's worthwhile. And that's probably why Buffett has more money than me. So anyhow, beware the fast cash. You actually can make a lot of money in a short amount of time if you understand value. But you need to understand how to calculate that. How about this? I remember, it was a long time ago. It was probably 2011. One of my friends said, hey, there's this thing called Bitcoin. It's really weird. Like, it's money, but it's digital, and they're like 25 cents each. And somebody actually bought a pizza with it, and we're like, no kidding. And looking at it, and like, it'd be kind of neat to have some. And it was complicated. Yeah, whatever. I didn't buy any. It was because of my my lack of attention. Now it's about 30,000. Was it a better deal at 20 cents, or was it a better deal at 30,000? You like 20 cents? Who all is with Jake? Who? We don't know yet. That's true. So who all thinks you should rather buy at 30,000? Nobody. All right, so I have no company. I'll make you a sales pitch on why you should rather buy at 30,000 than 20 cents. And it has to do with value. The value of an asset, boy, I probably can't remember this now, is the number, Metcalfe's law. The value of an asset is the number of users squared. So when it was 20 cents, there were hardly any users. And now there are really a lot of users. And in the last year, there have been a lot of big companies that are forming ETFs, like BlackRock is, I think, the world's largest asset management company, and they've applied for an ETF. Last week, 2 weeks ago, there was an SEC, a federal lawsuit that Grayscale won. So there's a lot of utility now, right? There's a lot of risk that went away. So even though you could get a lot of Bitcoin for $500 at 20 cents, if you're the person who's going to buy Bitcoin at 20 cents, you're going to buy a lot of other things that went to zero, right? The odds of Bitcoin existing as long as it did was not very high. It did make it, and now there's utility. Whether, where the future is, it would seem like it's going to be around. And by the way, I'm not saying that you should buy it. I'm just trying to explain the difference between price and value. But when you look at the progress that's been made, there's a lot more utility there. It's harder for me to buy it at 30,000 than it is at 20 cents. But I'm my own greatest enemy, right? When you look at the utility, when you look at the legal progress that's been made, I would argue that it's a better deal at 30,000 than it was at 20 cents. A year or two ago, it was at 58,000, I think. So it was almost double the price. And there's been a lot more progress made. Anyhow, just trying to help you give you a real life scenario on calculating value, risk and value. Another thing that is risky is inflation. 2%, it's not very much, right? Who cares? Doesn't matter. But 2% compounded, if you have $1,000, at the end of 20 years, you're left with $672. So that's why Kiyosaki says that savers are losers. Because if you save, then you lose, and you lose every day, and you lose in your sleep. Buffett wants you to earn in your sleep. But Buffett also has really large cash reserves. I should have checked what it was. A lot of times he'll have hundreds of millions.
160 billion.
160 billion of cash reserves. I was about ready to say billion, but it sounded like way too much.
What
So,
ratio is it like? Does it mean 10% of his investable assets? Or?
It's a couple trillion of investable assets, so it's a small percentage. Maybe 10%.
That's a great question. I don't know what that is. But he keeps a big wad of cash available. Do you know why?
They're in treasury bills. They're making 5%.
Okay. So he's making 5% on that.
Yeah.
Buy more assets?
I'm sorry?
To buy more assets?
Yeah, but if he's going to buy assets, why not get it done?
The market to go down?
Yeah, he's waiting for value. When I'm old enough to remember the 2008, 2009, and the bank stocks, bankruptcy, and they were dropping. And finally, Buffett stepped forward and he bought a huge amount of Bank of America. And that's when the market turned. He formed the bottom of the market because people had so much confidence in him that they started buying again, and that created the bottom of the market. But he got a tremendous amount of value. When you look at how much money he made on that deal, it was massive. He made a lot more by holding his money and waiting until the time was right and then buying than he would have in staying fully invested and having $160 in his bank account. So, did you ever hear of how alligators hunt? Or do you know, what's the difference between how alligators hunt versus how lions hunt? What's a lion? Yeah, they run. So, an alligator is one of the most efficient predators. They lay there in the water. They look like a log. And they wait for things to step into the water and they don't notice them until they're too close, and then they get them. And it's really, really efficient. If if in hard times, crocodiles, alligators, they're one of the last things to die because they are so efficient. That's one of the things that Buffett does. He's really patient. He waits, and he won't move until he knows there's value there. Now, this is using lions for an example, but did you know that lions won't eat mice? You think they're grossed out or what? There's what?
There's no nutrition there for it.
It's not enough. Yeah. The calories that a lion uses to catch a mouse is less than it gets from eating it. They're smart enough to know that. So anyhow, lions don't chase mice. Buffett will wait until there's a big enough deal that comes along that it's worthwhile moving. And until then, he stays in cash. He's biding his time. He's just waiting. And when the time is right, he strikes. And he understands value. And so when he buys, he doesn't just buy something that's a flash in the pan, that's exciting. But when there's actual value there, it's really fun. Now, have you ever noticed how sometimes things are high and then they're low, especially in commodities? The same cow might be worth $500, and 2 years later it's $3,000. What happened? What's the difference? Did she start milking more?
You're not a farmer.
I am a farmer, but I'm not a good farmer. So, all right.
The market goes up and down.
Yeah, that's better. I wasn't ready for that one. All right, so the market goes through its cycles. Right now, cattle are really high. The reason they're high is because there's been a drought out west, and there's not enough feed, so they've been slaughtering more cattle. In the last 2 years, they've been slaughtering more cattle than have been produced, and so cattle numbers overall are down. So, cattle are high. A lot of money there. It must be a good time to buy cows, right? Let's get in. It's exciting. Let's go. Is that right? Maybe. Yeah, maybe. So maybe if the market keeps on going up, but what are the odds of that? Cows reproduce. And so the odds are very good that 2 years from now, there's going to be another low in the market. That's just how it works. It's commodities, it's supply and demand. It sounds really simple, right? But it's cyclical. For a really great example that frustrates me every year is the middle of February, there's this day called Valentine's Day. Have you ever noticed how the price of cards and the price of roses spike right around the 14th? I've been working on my wife for 17 years now. I'd really like to celebrate Valentine's Day on the 15th. And she won't go for it. But it's a lot cheaper. It's the same card. It's the same rose. I mean, it's a day older, but whatever. But does that make sense? It's cyclical. It's supply and demand. On Valentine's Day, there's a lot of demand. The day after, there's not so much demand. There's more, instead of Valentine's cards, more apology cards sold the day after. So it's cyclical, and that's exactly how the markets work. So in the past couple of years, there's more cattle being slaughtered than ideal. The price was down. Now there's not enough cows, so the price is up. The same thing works. It applies in every asset class. Right now, there's a farm that's going to get sold, and there's a gas well on it. The gas well has produced $250,000 in royalties per year for the last couple of years. What do you think that's going to do to the price of the farm? Probably help it, right? Yeah, that's pretty exciting. But the price of gas was $8 last year. It's $2 now. The reason it was 8 was because of Putin. Is there going to be another surprise? Right? That was a surprise that rattled the markets. If you knew what the future was going to be, if everyone knows what the future is going to be, that determines the price, right? You only make money in the markets with happy surprises. Like if you're owning gas, then Putin was a happy surprise. Otherwise, unhappy. But all the same, you remember our Tesla argument the other year? When I was here the other year, somebody was asking about Tesla, and I thought it was overvalued because when you look at the price of what the Tesla stock was compared to Ford and GM, the price is really, really high. Why is that? It's because everyone likes Musk a lot. They think that the limits of what he can do are pretty high. And so they expect a lot, which means there's not a lot of happy surprises left in the market. Does that make sense? So when you want to buy an asset, like this farm that's going to get sold, I have no idea what it's going to bring, but it's probably going to bring a lot more because those numbers are true. That is actually the amount of money that gas well brought in. But it's only been 8 years ago where there was farms being sold close to that with mineral rights included, and it didn't really make a difference whether there's mineral rights included or not because gas price was down so long, so far. Even people who had wells, they were getting, I know people who were getting close to $100,000 a month, and it dropped. This guy was getting $98,000 a month, and it dropped down to like $1,400. It's massive. The price didn't drop by 90%, but the way that the royalties calculated, his payout really changed. So you need to be aware of that, and you need to buy when everyone else despairs. It's a common thing. You've often heard it, but the time to buy is when there's blood in the streets. When everyone else is depressed. The time to buy houses was 2009. I mean, if you didn't, then today's still a decent time, but it was much better then, right? But it was really scary because the prices were dropping. Where's it going to stop? Nobody knew. It was scary, and that's the time to buy. Your greatest enemy is yourself. And markets are cyclical. I don't know. Something's going to change sometime. Sometime there will be plenty of houses around and the price is going to drop. I don't know when. I mean, maybe it'll be 20 years. I don't know. But right now, there's actually an opportunity in building rather than buying an already constructed house, because the cost. I should maybe change those words a little bit, especially if you're a builder, because you can control your costs better. You might have access to these certain windows that are discounted. And anyhow, if you, but you can really, sorry, you can really do pretty good right now at building rather than buying, because when you add the costs of the lot and the cost of materials, your finished product is worth more. That's why people build spec houses and sell them. Right now, that's a good thing to do. At some point, when there's more depression in the market, then it's cheaper to buy already constructed houses, because you can't, the cost of replacement is higher. So anyhow, that's not true in every situation, but it's just good to be aware of that, right? And it's good to know that everything is cyclical, and when everyone's excited about it, it's not the time to buy. When everyone asks how things are doing, because they know you're in real estate or in Dogecoin or whatever, that's generally not the best time to buy. Howard Marks is another iconic investor. He says that he'll sell anything when he has something else to buy that's a 50% better deal. So that's a different way of looking at it. He'll free up cash, even if what he's selling is only fairly priced. If there's something else that he can buy that's a 50% better deal, it's a cool thing, right? Because you're going out of a fairly priced asset to an undervalued asset. So, have you ever seen a deal that went sideways? You did? I did too. I'd like to tell you a story. There's this, I wasn't going to start out like that. I messed it up. All right. So, forget I said that. We're going to rewind the time. So anytime you get into a deal, it's really fun. It's exciting, because you don't know. You're in unconscious incompetence. It's really, really a lot of fun. It's so exciting. So one of the first deals that I did it was really cool. Wait till you hear this. It wasn't open to just everyone. The way I found out about it is I had a friend who was married to the head guy at USDA in Harrisburg. And one of the loans they did was to an aquatics professor in Delaware. And he figured out how to grow shrimp in captivity. It was really neat. Generally, you haven't been able to do that, because when they're confined, they eat each other. But he actually was really smart. He figured out how to do it. And Purdue, some of you guys, Purdue's a common name if you know Mitzi Purdue. Her chicken company, they weren't renewing all their contracts. The demand for chicken was down. Same way with Tyson. Down in the Delmar Peninsula, down where this professor was from, there's a really high concentration of chicken houses. And these farmers had houses and they weren't being filled, and he had an answer for that. So he could take houses that were already built, put shrimp in them, and you're within just a couple hours of a lot of the U.S.'s population. When you look at a map, you look at how tight the cities are along the East Coast. It didn't cost that much to retrofit the houses. You'd line them with plastic and put in circulators and heaters, infrared heaters, and the water would circulate around. So, pretty exciting, right? He had raised shrimp. He sold them. He knew how much they bring. And by the way, you can change the color of shrimp by changing the color of the liner. You could have black shrimp. You could have white shrimp. You could change the color. So not only could people order their sizes, they could order their color. It really was cool. And they were almost at full deployment. they had a number of houses out. They weren't quite ready to harvest. Another 2 months or so, they're going to be ready to go. Maybe 3 months. The cash flow would start, and then just sit back and rake it in. And but they needed a little bit of money until then. And we negotiated. We got a pretty good valuation for our money, and it was so exciting. We went down and looked at the chicken houses, and the shrimpies were swimming around in there, and I mean, they're just growing fat. We just couldn't wait. And that's how I got my money. Not. 2 months later, they went bankrupt. Who would have ever thought it? So things happened, right? What happened? Thanks for asking. I'd love to tell you. It was a series of things. So it was a new thing, and farmers, they're a little suspect. You know, they're generally they move slower, and they want to see things proved out, and so there was a number of farms that had shrimp in them, and a lot more who had signed up, but they weren't quite ready to do the retrofitting. It was just that just needed just about ready to roll, and the professor, he was a smart guy. He was a good professor, all right? He wasn't a businessman, and money was tight, and he got behind on his payments, on his bank loans. The bank came out to look at a chicken house, and they mentioned to the farmer something about that they're about ready to call the note. And of course, that spread like wildfire. Nobody was ready to spend any money retrofitting their chicken houses, so all of a sudden, the future promise, I mean, it's going to be a lot slower. And then an end wall blew out of a chicken house, and you know, the shrimp go washing out across the field just at the wrong time. Just one thing after the next. And they were just at the choke point, right? My money was supposed to carry them over. It wasn't a lot, not in today's terms. I mean, back then I was 25 or something like that, and I gave him 30 grand. It was a lot of money back then. But what went wrong? What was the risk? Remember, what are the two main things? Understanding risk and collateral, right? What collateral did I have? Shrimp, I know. The bad thing is I didn't even eat good for a little while. I didn't get any shrimp out of the deal. So there was shrimp, but you know, that was not a calculation that I did to see how much actual value of shrimp is there. The business risk, it's really different buying a business than it is buying a house. Does that make sense? A house, you have a real asset that even if it's mismanaged, someone will buy it. A business is this magic thing. You add things together and then it makes money. And it sounds oversimplistic, but when you see it in reverse, when you see a company that goes bankrupt, there's a place that I used to haul out of, and it was bustling, a lot of things going on, happy people, and it was a neat place. And then they went bankrupt. And I stopped by the week after. It was quiet. Nothing was going on. The equipment was left sit where it sat. It was dead. The assets were still all there, right? But there's this magic thing called the business. It was life. It was gone. And all of a sudden, it's worthless. The assets aren't worth very much. So when you look at a deal, you need to understand what the collateral is and what the business risk is. And another thing that you should know is that bad news is good news. I have a friend who has a Mid-South house, and every now and then he gets bad news. A tenant didn't pay, or a tree fell over and it has to be cleaned up. That's actually really good news. In Ponzi schemes, you do not get bad news. It's all good news. But when you get bad news, it's manageable, you can deal with it, you move on. That is real business. So you need to understand bad news is good news. Being wiped out isn't good news, but just if nothing ever goes wrong, something's wrong. So if there's never any bad news, that's really bad news. Kevin, I have a friend. His name is Kevin Hoover, and he's kind of quiet when you get to meet him, but he makes me nervous. And I'll tell you why. I was talking to him one time, and he said, "Hey, how about that loan that you have?" And I said, "What loan?" He said, "Well, that from this bank." And I was like, "Yeah, how do you know about it?" "Well, it's public knowledge. I was just looking." And I see. And there's a lot of stuff. He's a smart guy. And it's fun to chat with him because he figures a lot of things out that I don't. And you did a deal here one time that all these stories are really going to be really good or really bad, right? Which do you think it's going to be? One or the other. So what was this deal? You bought into a business, right?
Yeah, I bought into a business that it was actually milking robots. So I make ventilation controllers for a living, and I have to make the manuals, like do all the programming, make the manuals, do the support, have people call in and tell you, this manual is like really bad. Like, who in their right mind would have made this?
How does that make you feel?
It actually takes a little bit out of my psyche. It's almost like, why do I do this for a living? I thought I did try, but when you do look at it, it actually is kind of bad for, depending what level. If you're an electrician, it's not bad, but if you're an end user, it is not near good enough. And
so you're into electronics. So you understood this. What was the business you bought into? What was it?
It was milking robots. They're buying it.
Right.
They're buying it from a manufacturer and they're reselling it, and they have all the manuals. Everything's all done. Like, how hard could this be? It's got to be easy.
Kind of like farming, where you plant corn in the spring and you sit around the rest of the year and you harvest it in the fall.
Yeah, there's nothing. Yeah, little things could go wrong, but it's all really manageable.
Milking robots, you buy them, you sell them, you get rich.
Yeah,
They do their thing.
They break. People pay you big bucks for parts. I mean, the margin on the parts is huge.
And there was even a partner who came with it who was in the business before.
That is correct, and it all looked great. There was a bit of the company had been going. They were going bankrupt. We were going to turn it around.
So, but you need to understand, this was something that was Kevin's core competency. It was electronics. So when you get into things, business is one of those things where there's broke farmers and there's rich farmers, and they're all planting corn, right? It's in operations. So Kevin was the man for it.
It was an easy to understand. I thought it was within my core competency, but yeah, it was fun to get in. Lots of figuring things out and lots of rah-rah for the first while.
How many millions a year are you making from it now?
It made 3%.
3%. Well, congratulations. That's better than nothing.
I mean, it's not a. Yes, it's not like it's a. It was with a good guy. So it was kind of a crummy deal, but it truly was with a good guy.
So he's honest.
He's honest. He's very honest. So it's not. I never felt like I had to second guess the numbers. I mean, if he did it, the numbers were correct.
So what went wrong?
Everything. There was selling. So if you have a part you pay $50 for and sell it for $100, but you pay somebody $50 an hour to help you, and you spend 2 hours on the phone helping them fix it, how much money do you make? It was lots of technical support. When you sold a new unit, somebody they quoted and designed probably 25 jobs for everyone they got, and just the overhead just killed it.
So another thing that you introduced me to was long tail versus short tail work. What's that?
As far as
If you sell a product, long tail products versus short tail
oh,
products.
okay, from milking robot. So if Phil, he's driving truck and he wants to start milking cows and needs a milking robot, he's going to talk about this lousy robot for probably 3 or 4 years before he buys one, and he's going to come around and consume a lot of time thinking about this robot.
But then after you sell it, it's good to go.
Then after he buys it, then he comes around and consumes a lot more technical support.
But robots, milking robots that can work around the clock, fortunately, they only break down between 8 and 5 Monday to Thursday, right?
Yeah. Oh, and that's the other thing. They need to run around the clock, and so then they make technical support around the clock. So the ideal business you have stops being used after normal business hours, because then people aren't as worried about fixing it after hours. But milking robots, that's when I think about getting into some type of business thing, I always compare it to the support side to a milking robot. Is this something that's going to make weekend, middle of the night emergency calls? Because that's something you really want to watch for, because that gets really expensive to pay people to wake up at night, because they were trying to do free support and 24/7 support, and after a while, it was like, you're going to have one or the other. It just isn't going together.
So you don't really enjoy waking up at 2 a.m. Sunday morning on a call from this robot that you sold 4 years ago?
No, the average person doing it soon, they quit. I mean, they were good people, but they just quit.
So it's fascinating how everything looks so exciting. You have to understand that, right? It's so exciting when you get into it. And then, oh man, I didn't think of that. That's what happens. And so it's important to understand some of the nuances. As far as partnerships go, wasn't there a guy who partnered with a dairy farmer? How was that deal structured?
Oh, there was a guy from around here. He moved to New York and was going to be partners with an older farmer, and they were going to. I'm trying to think of all the details. Hey, Eric, what were the details in that one with Zimmerman that moved to New York? And
Well, the guy that moved up was a 49% partner.
49% partner. The young guy's 49%.
Milk price went up. They were doing really well. So the 51%, and they each had voting rights according to their ownership shares.
Okay, that's what it was. The milk price was great. 49%. The old guy's 51%. There's no relation. It's just two people in the industry, and so all is great until the young guy thought he's going to be making equity and going to be going to town long term, and then all of a sudden one day the 51% partner says, I think we're done now. And he goes, wait a minute, how's this? Well, the voting power is 49-51, and I get to say. So
He said, I vote you out.
he was voted out, and I'm not even sure how they valued it. But anyway, that was how that one ended.
And that was after a couple of slow years of low milk price, right? And then the milk price finally started going up. And then he quick bought him out before the price of milk went too high and the value was too high.
Yeah, he bought him out while the getting was easy. I mean, the good times were on the horizon, and he voted him out.
Yeah, so it's important to have an exit strategy. You need to have an operating agreement. You need to know how things are going to get handled, because this integrity thing, that honesty, that's really important. Maybe he was allowed to do what he did, but it wasn't according to the understanding going into it. Wasn't there another guy? What was it? They were partners. The young guy bought a percentage of the business. And how did that partnership go?
The 10%, 90.
Yeah.
That was actually a relative of mine. He bought into, or the 90% guy, he was looking for someone to help run it and stick around long term. So he left my cousin buying at 10%, but he gave him pretty well 50% of the voting power. I mean, on their, they didn't.
He considered him.
He really considered his value, and they're still together today, and they have grown tremendously. I mean, it was like when he was in it, their sales were like 1 or 2 million, and now they're 50, somewhere in that.
Wow. So do you think that's a hint? I mean, treating people with respect and trust?
I believe it is a very strong hint that
Yeah.
they're still together and they really grow.
So if Donald Trump, I don't know if you like him or not. Most people are not undecided, but he has made progress. So I'm just telling you, something he always liked to do with business partners is go play golf with them. And he would watch to see how they kept score. Because they cheated a little bit, he's like, oh, interesting. I'm not doing a deal with you. Like, he wouldn't tell them that, but he knew where their integrity was, right? If the ball was in the sand trap, they wouldn't just move it out. He'd take the stroke and he'd mark it down. So if you have a way to vet your partners before you get into a deal, because those two stories you told, enormously different outcomes. And if the guy could have known, that would have made a huge difference.
So how do we know?
Well, if you can try little things, like I don't have a good example, but I know people who deliberately give potential partners a chance to steal a little bit or screw them over a little bit. They don't know, the prospective guy doesn't know that he's being watched, but just give him a chance, whatever. Give him $10 for go get a sandwich or whatever, and just watch a little. And a lot of times you get hints. But that integrity thing, that's huge. And I sincerely apologize. I was so long-winded. Your stories are awesome, but Phil's got some good stories too. And I'd like to hear from him. So this is Phil Yoder. We've been friends for a long time. And he's got some good stories too. Did you ever hear of Just Shrimp?
I did.
Were you smarter than me?
No, I was definitely not.
All right. What a disappointment, right? You remember that conference call? They said we're done.
Yeah, that was no fun.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, when you're in your 20s and you have money invested into a deal that you think is going places, it's not a fun phone call.
Yeah. So after that, then he has an interesting story. For a number of years, you were working in an office. You were doing fine, but not prospering. And then you went into a business. What was it?
We were doing acoustic wave therapy.
And I'm Amish. What's that mean?
So basically, there's a machine that they use. You can go and use it on the human body. It'll break up joints. It will create what's called angiogenesis. The body will go in and then heal itself. You're forcing blood into certain areas, so then the body will basically heal itself. It'll put red blood cells into the area.
Thanks. You probably didn't understand it. I didn't really either. I'll give you the shortcut. It's like, let's say you have an artery that's not getting blood through right. Instead of, normally they'll cut you open and they'll do something and they'll sew you back up and then you can heal. Well, Phil had this machine, like sound waves, right? Mm-hmm. And it would break up the junk in the veins, and it was really, really cool. It's what, yeah, so a friend had a knee problem. He just used that just in the last couple weeks. And he thought he was going to have surgery, but it took care of it. So it's really cool technology. And you had a protected area. So you bought into a franchise, right?
Yeah, basically bought into a franchise. I found out about the opportunity, flew out to San Diego, looked at a practice out there. Guy was killing it out there, doing $1 million or more a year. And I'm like, well, hey, why couldn't we do this on the East Coast? Wound up putting, the franchise was $100,000 to buy into, bought into it, and basically a month later, we had another competitor come into the market space, and there was no more protected areas, so anybody could come into the area close by. So that really killed the whole opportunity.
Yeah. something happened. Who would have known? And then, how did it go? I mean, how'd it go?
It was a struggle. It was basically, I've been dispatching trucks, been learning about investing, wanted to get out into, something else besides trucks, try something different. And it was a struggle. I mean, I put a lot of time and effort into it, had a doctor, had a staff. And, I definitely believe in the 10,000 hour rule. When somebody spends 10,000 hours or more in a space, there's so many things that are much easier when you have a lot of experience in the space, and I didn't. So wound up selling the practice, did okay, but sure wasn't anything to write home about.
It's hard work.
Yeah, a lot of hard work.
Yeah. And so coming out of that, like it sucked up a lot of your money. Like when you finally did okay is when you sold the practice, right? That's when you got to survival mode. But probably about as low as you were financially, probably your life.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
No fun.
Yeah. And then that was what, 2019?
Yeah.
Beginning of 2020?
Yep.
And then you got into a very specialized form of trucking. And 2020, what happened to rates?
So I've been around trucking for 26 years. Moving into 2021, rates went up substantially, and it was a great ride. I've never seen anything like it in 26 years. It was a great time to be in the market. I've always looked at some of my uncles and wondered how they bought farms and did things that they did. And if you can be in a market at a certain time, you can really accomplish a lot of things in a short amount of time.
So he entered a market that he was very familiar with, unconscious competence, and the timing was perfect. I mean, rates went through the roof. And you got to understand, Phil is a lot of things, but something that he's not is lazy. I don't think he's ever had bed sores. Anyhow, he spent a lot of time in his chair, and over the last 3 years made tremendous progress. And then what? You bought a little real estate, right? What was that first one you did?
Yeah, so let's see, this is 23, so the fall of 21, bought a cabin that was local, and it was 7 miles from my house. That's done very well. Did a cost segregation study on it. The first year, I'm in a partnership with that. The first year, that saved us $82,000 or $83,000 in taxes. So that was a good move just on the tax side.
Right, and it's a really nice cabin, and it's on Airbnb, and it rents out really good. I'm not sure if you're going to be honest enough to say it, but it's like really, really good. How's that make you feel?
I tell you what, just thinking about being at a place where you're not making a whole lot of money to where the bills are paid, you see long-term goals being accomplished. It's a whole different quality of life. It really is.
Yeah, it was really fun seeing it. It's a cabin. You paid enough for it, but the value that you created by cleaning up the rough spots and doing different things to add value, the rates, the money it's generating, I mean, it's worth a lot more. It was forced value. Mm-hmm. And you're buying something else right now, aren't you? What are you buying?
Buying 160 acres out in Oklahoma. And
whatever for?
There's a rock quarry on it, and it pays royalties for every ton of stone that's sold off of the place. And I'll tell you, looking back a little bit, a lot of you guys in the area would know Claire Hoover. I've been very interested in the self-storage space. Went to Claire, talked to him, and he said, well, I said to Claire, I said, I'd really like to get into the space. I'd love to get into some more passive income. And Claire had some really wise words of advice. He said, I would really encourage you to just look at any type of passive income. He said, it doesn't have to be self-storage. It can be anything. He said, just look at passive income. So found this deal, this qualifies. We just did a commercial appraisal on it, and it came back double what the purchase price is. So pretty happy with that deal.
That's really exciting.
Yeah.
And so it's a stone quarry. Are they down to the last 3 feet of rock, or?
No, they're only down 20 feet on 35 acres. It's 165 acres, and they have no idea how deep it goes. They've done test holes, and they've never hit the bottom, so.
So there's, the guy can show you what it made over the last couple of years, but is there any way to have any idea what it'll do in the future? I mean, is the company ready to shut down, or how can you know?
The company is actually expanding. They just bought 3 more distributorships to retail rock, so it's looking like it's going to be pretty solid. So
by doing due diligence, by going and talking to the mining company,
Yep.
you have an idea what the future cash flow is going to be on it.
yeah.
Yeah, it's so exciting. So I hope you're listening, right? A lot of us buy houses, but there are things other than houses we can buy, and it's not probably that none of us are really that emotionally attached to a house. We just like the money that the house brings. And do you think you'll get a lot of plug toilets in that quarry?
I've had plugged toilets. I've unplugged them. I had property in downtown Harrisburg, dealt with that, and this is a little more attractive.
Yeah, it's really exciting. So anyhow, I was going to have 10 commandments of investing, all right? And I talk too long, can't do it. But one of the things that's really important, I want you to remember this: mind your own business. I'm serious. Whatever your business is, mind your business, right? So once you got something that was churning cash flow, you minded your own business. Like you sat in that chair and you did a lot of trucking. I mean, it was really intense. And now you have a couple of trucks. You're at home more. You still do some sitting in your chair and do outstanding job, stuff that would be hard for anyone to get done. But when you find something that works, do it. And then if you can buy things that create cash flow, it's just unbelievable how much progress you've made in the last 3 years. It's inspirational. And anyone can do that. You just need to bide your time, and when it's right, move. What else would you say?
Let's see. I had made a couple notes, but I would say, you know what? I don't have a college education. I've got a GED. But I'll tell you, any kind of business deal, I've never had anybody ask for a college degree.
Did they ask you for your degree when you went to buy the quarry?
No,
They didn't?
No.
Really?
Never have. So I would just encourage anybody, it doesn't matter what your education is, learn about, finances, real estate, learn about investing, learn how to do a great job. And there's a lot of opportunity, especially right now in the market space where, a guy can go out, have his own company, do plumbing or construction or anything like that, build a good team. The sky's the limit right now. If you want to show up and even do a decent job, not even a great job, there's a huge amount of opportunity, but there's a lot more opportunity for the people to do a great job.
That's right. Yeah, 100%. So if you're a W-2 employee, if you have a job, right? If you don't have a business, you're still in business. What are you selling? Time. How many customers do you have? Yeah, take care of that customer. If you do a really good job, one of my friends is working at a shop, a shed shop that we deliver for, and he is an outstanding guy. And he just got offered to be able to buy a percentage of the business because he minded his own business, right? he was in the business of selling his time. He did a really good job of it. Because of that, there was more opportunity came his way. And I really think that it's available for anyone. You just have to lean into it, enjoy what you do. If you'd have hated what you were doing, do you think you would have done very well at trucking?
No, definitely not.
Yeah. Okay, well, I appreciate it. Didn't those guys do a good job? Sorry, I'm
Are you
out of
done,
time.
Matt?
Yeah, I'm out of time.
How about a big hand for Matt, too? Yeah, every time it's like, well, not sure. I think Matt had asked me if he has like 45 minutes, and I said, no, more like an hour and a quarter if you want to. I said, we can always do a bunch of Q&A at the end, and this is how it oftentimes ends up. There's so much more that they could have been talking about. So thank you, guys. Couple of just closing comments. You know what? I'm gonna give you the phone number if somebody is here that wants to listen to Matt's calls, and if you don't get the emails, or if you just want to jot it down now, I'm going to give you that phone number and access code as soon as I can find it. Once in a while, I press the wrong number when I go to listen to it, and I'll call Matt, and then I quick hang up, and then he calls me back, and I've gotten pretty good at not doing that. But anyway, that phone number is area code 757-841-1184. 757-841-1184. And there's an access code that you need to enter. It's 626-762 and the pound sign. 626-762 pound. That's how you can listen to Matt every Monday and hear some more of what he has to say. Next month, we have a speaker coming that probably none of you guys have heard of. I hadn't heard his name before. A guy by the name of John Putnam from Charlotte, North Carolina. Has anybody heard the name? One or two people? So Kervin Horning reached out to me probably a month or two ago and asked if we're looking for speakers. And I said, sure, we're always looking for speakers. So this is a guy that Kervin Horning and Matt Lapp from JM Lapp have gotten to know, does some coaching and stuff. I'll try to send out maybe a link to his website tomorrow in the email. But I'm just kind of giving you a heads up now because I believe, I've never met him. I've never heard him speak. I've never talked to him. But I think he's a guy that is going to be worth coming out for. And sometimes if it's someone that we've never heard of, if we don't have some sort of connection with it, there can be like, well, who's this guy? What's he even talking about? So I'm not sure what his topic is going to be, but just to give you a little bit of an idea, if you go on his website, one of the first things you'll see is, it says, helping faithful stewards wisely win the unique challenges of wealth and success. So something along those lines is what he talks about. He's doing this as a favor to our group. He's going to be in the area. He normally gets paid to speak, but he heard about our group, and so he's going to come and talk to us next month, October, whatever that date is. So I think that's it for now. Matt, thanks again for sharing, and thank you all for coming out. We'll see you back here the first Wednesday evening in October.